Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to use field blur to create a really cool um, bokeh backdrop. So this is the after and this is the before. Um, I'll also show you how I got some of the rich redder tones in there and how I finish off my pictures basically. So I'm going to start by getting rid of all the things I don't want in my backdrop. So this little weird triangle, this little yellow thing, um, oop, yelling at me, this pole. This was just a fun shot I had taken. I'm going to go like this. I had taken in a friend's yard of my son for his birthday invite picture. And it happened to come out terrible, and so I had to sit there and work on it for 3 hours. But, you know. So I am going to flip-flop the backdrop first to create a symmetrical finish or look on the backdrop. And I'm going to do that by selecting with the rectangle marquee tool. I got how much I want to select, and then I just do Command J. That will copy it onto a new layer, and then Command T will allow me to free transform it, and I'll just grab that side and drag it right on over. Now once I have it where I want, sometimes I'll drag it a little further so it doesn't look too symmetrical. I don't really mind if it's too symmetrical when we're going to blur it anyhow. And I go like that. And now he looks all funky, so we have to find my son again. Let's create a layer mask on there. Select your brush tool. You can just press B, and then make sure your opacity is 100 by clicking 0. And we'll bring it down, not too much. Make sure it's also on the fuzzy brush. You don't want it to be a sharp line. And just kind of erase away where you don't want the backdrop to be flip-flopped. There we are. So now that we have that, we can just do Command-Shift-E. That will merge everything together. Oops, I think I missed a spot. Yeah, I missed a few spots. Oops. There we go. Now you can make sure by just turning it off and on. And now Command-Shift-E, merge it all together. And I'm actually going to get rid of one more thing. I'm not a fan of this pole. I think it's actually a tree, but it's distracting to me. So I'm going to select somewhere else. It's okay if there's a few sharp lines here and there, because when we blur it, it won't be noticeable at all. So now that I have that flip-flopped and he's kind of framed nicely, I'm going to create the blur. First step is I select my quick selection tool right up here, quick selection. And make sure it's on the plus. You can switch it to plus up there if it's not, and then you can go and select your backdrop that you want to blur. And go in closer and select in here all the little areas that you don't want to forget. And see how it selected a funky little area in here? I can just press Alt, it will turn it to subtract, and it will subtract from that selection right there. Alright, and once you have it basic to how you want it, that is when you use one of my favorite little tools, Refine Edge. So you're going to go up here and click Refine Edge, and this will get around all the tiny little details like hair. This is great for also if you're switching out backdrops, using digital backdrops or sky overlays or anything like that. It's really, really, really awesome little tool. And you just brush around the edges. Sometimes you can click on Smart Radius. It will you can adjust all these little things to help you out. This one's pretty simple since my background was pretty far away from my subject. It left enough of a contrast between the little sharp details and the blur that it selects pretty easily what it wants. You just brush over all the little things that you wanted that that are clumped together that shouldn't be. So it gets around all those fun little things. You can add, feather the edge a little bit if you need to. That will allow for it to look less cut and paste. Oh, it's doing some funky things right there. It's okay though. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to, if I do contrast, sometimes it will get rid of. Oh, come on. Well, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's okay. So once you have it selected the best you can or however you want it, then you are going to keep it on selection. If you were to swap out a backdrop, you would actually go down to new layer with layer mask. But this one you want to keep it on selection, because if you go to layer mask, it will actually, your photo's still whole basically. It's not a specific area, it's blurring. It will blur the whole thing regardless. It will just show you a certain amount of it. So basically you'll have that halo of the fuzziness around your subject that you don't want. So keep it on selection. Now do OK. And I should have duplicated my layer, but it's not the biggest deal right now. It just helps to save if you needed to erase anything that you accidentally selected. But now that we have it selected, we're going to go to Blur Gallery, Field Blur, and you are going to set your points. So my first point, I'm going to set in the middle of the picture. It usually is already there, but and I'm going to set it to wherever I like. So I'm going to do 149 just because it looks good to me. And now we're going to go to 149 here, do another one over here. 149, where are you? There you are. And now I'm going to actually make some pin points at the bottom, because that's where my subject is, that's in focus. And I'm going to set these actually to 0. They're set at 15 automatically. But I'm going to set them down to 0. And that way it gives a gradient from in focus to out of focus, making it a little more realistic. Now I'm going to bring these down so that the tree line isn't so harsh. If you bring them down, it kind of makes it flow a little nicer from blur to focus. So now that I have that the way I want it, I'm going to click OK. Then we're going to wait. I have a lot of programs running right now, so it's going to take a little longer than usual. But we'll just sit here. There we go. Alright, so now we can just unselect that, and you have the blurred background. Now, if you want to make it a little more dramatic, I mean, it looks nice like this, but I like a little, I've made an action I call deep red paint, which basically is just a fill layer. So you can go to Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color, and I put my layer on Overlay, and I bring my opacity down to like, say 20, and do OK. And then I like to select like a deep red color. It makes it a little more rich. Alright, so we have like a nice deep maroon. and it's on my whole picture. I don't want it on him because he looks all red and silly. So we're going to actually click on the layer mask, and we're going to do Command I to invert it. And now we're going to paint on our backdrop. We could do it the opposite way and paint it off our subject, but I like to kind of know where I'm putting it, and sometimes I don't want it on my foreground, and this just allows me to be a little more precise sometimes. Oops. And once we have it painted on here, wherever I want it, you can always play with the opacity if you want it to be deeper. I don't really like it too strong. Alright, I have it how I want it. I'm going to merge them together, Command-Shift-E, and then I'm going to create just one more soft vignette, which I use a new layer mask, select Gradient tool, then I go to make sure that I'm on the radial gradient, and make sure that I'm on the second one in, which is foreground to transparent. And then I like to use a neutral color, but a dark neutral, brown. So I'll go to like my browny orange colors, and rather than a harsh black, I just think it's a little softer. And I select my middle, drag it out pretty far. Sometimes I want it heavier. And then I can actually just adjust my opacity, add a layer mask, and brush it off my subject again. Oops, make sure I'm at 100 opacity. And then that is how I did my backdrop from there.